Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, August 17th. This is Nadex Morning Analysis, where we look at hotspots in the markets for today. My name is Todd Rich. I'm with Nadex. With me from Keep Trading Simple is Brian Caprice. Before Brian and I jump into it, we do need to share this disclaimer that trading involves risk, that any trading decisions you make are solely your responsibility and at your own risk. And this is an educational session. Please do not construe anything Brian or I say as a buy or sell recommendation. We are doing this for your education purposes. Now, the news for the day, what everyone's going to be talking about to begin with, is right here on. In fact, I think I can make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see it. Hey, there we have it. Retail sales numbers just came out. Retail sales came in at negative 1.1% for the month of July. It was forecast to come in at negative 0.3%. So certainly not good numbers. I mean, the people have started to spend less going into additional COVID concerns. So that is certainly what people are going to be talking about. The other thing we need to point out, and this is going to be important because on the heels of that, we've got Fed chair speaking. So obviously, when the members of the Fed speak, we do have to sort of pay attention to what they say. But this is Powell speaking. So 1:30 today, when he speaks, people will listen. Now, what are we seeing happening in the markets right out of the gates? A quick little, and this is, oh, well, now things are changing a little bit. First, it was kind of surprising. Uh, the dollar saw some immediate strength out of that, which was a question mark. Yes. And we saw it. Here's the dollar seeing some strength against the euro dollar, and then it immediately started to retrace. It looks like people are trying to extend it again right now, but we saw the dollar gain weakness. Gain strength. I apologize. Gain strength across the board. We saw gold and silver both get hit. They sold off a bit, but that completely retraced on both of those. So it's just sort of interesting. It's like people had anticipated negative news. It came in negative, maybe not as negative as what they thought, and then everyone started taking off their positions. So I don't know. It's rather interesting. In any case, um, and then we could take a look at the equities. In fact, a quick peek before I flip it over to Brian. Yeah, the equities were all down more than this. They've retraced a bit. We'll see what happens. So it's just interesting how people anticipated it, traded into the news, and now we're letting retail traders digest it. We'll see what happens when the markets open. So, Brian, let me flip it over to you, and we could just take a look at it's maybe the dollar,
Mhm.
at gold and silver, and then maybe we could poke around the currency. I'm sorry, the indices a bit
Mhm.
before we really want to tee people up to come for your full blown session this morning at noon Eastern. Noon Eastern, noon Eastern. In fact, I'm going to drop that into the chat right now. If you're not registered for this, definitely sign up for this where Ryan will go through everything.
Okay.
Right, there we go.
All right. So, I mean, obviously, the core retail sales and retail sales numbers are extremely important. One trend that it seems to be lumping into that is the pound weakness in the overnight. The UK had some labor data out and showed, yes, there was a recovery there, but it's still not back up to pre-pandemic levels. And it kind of took a negative. And again, so you're seeing things like the pound dollar right now, 95 pips down in 24 hours. And a lot of that has been kind of more recently, particularly with the dollar strengthening because of this news. And again, euro pound yen down, but pound dollar is the big mover right now because of that. And a lot of this movement, you see this, and you see that it's a red mist to the downside, which should technically be bad for the dollar, but everybody knows that. Hence why we're seeing dollar strength come through on this one. Now, it was expected to be lower. I was looking actually to see if we could get a surprise hit. And a lot of the number from before being higher was due to people getting stimulus money coming out, the child tax credits or whatever, or not tax credits, but I guess the child stimulus, I guess is a better word.
Yeah, it was a stimulus.
Yeah, it was kind of like a stimulus check for having kids, I guess. Um, that was the big deal. Walmart earnings, if you guys saw it, they said they blew the second quarter out because of the additional stimulus spending. It was a very, very big, a big earning, quarter for them. This again being down, they expected it. Again, definitely more than expected, but does it really mean a whole lot as far as the economy goes? Not really. I would say that it's probably more of a minor thing today. Big question is, what is Fed Chair Powell going to say at 1:30 today? There are going to be questions. Retail sales will probably come up, but remember, sales is really not kind of what's the big kind of talking factor. It's more inflation and where we are with kind of vaccines and COVID. I did see, I don't see it in the news here today, but I did see that, you know, there are people that are getting the third shot now for the immunocompromised. Um, but that's going to be probably expanded. I saw something earlier, but of course it's not in the feed right now.
Oh, I've
Um,
got it. I actually have that.
you have it? Okay.
I saw it last night, and
Yeah. I saw it last night. Yeah.
yeah, and it did. They are going to recommend, and there's here. I'll actually, because I can't find it on my. I've got it on my phone. Of course, everything is mobile.
It's see, we can't. Yeah. Same scenario.
Yeah, it's they're actually talking about this week announcing that uh, starting in September they're going to recommend to anyone who had the two doses to get the third one as a booster going into winter. I think they want to, you know, get in front of it. So definitely a little bit of a spin from, hey, let's get all these extra doses and send them around the world to we're going to need them here
No, we're just
to
gonna keep them
prevent.
here.
Well, so I mean, it's the highly transmissible they because it is showing decreasing effectiveness amid a growing number of cases by the highly transmissible Delta variant.
hmm
So, yeah, that's what they're saying. They're going to announce that they're going to
Which is
recommend
interesting
everyone
because the
get the
UK
third.
didn't have the third one, and the UK already has the decline with Delta that they said they've already peaked and are heading back down again. So it is
Hmm.
interesting that you hear one thing, but then you hear conflicting data the next day. So that's how it works. But anyway, guys, here is the dollar index. Again, this is not something we're trading. You can see, obviously, this is a very large candle. It's probably the largest. There's one candle over here as well. We're rallying up to an area right now where we do have sellers. And again, this goes back to that data that we saw earlier. It's negative. So everyone's like, oh, we got a short, we got a short, we got a short. And that's why the market is going up because everybody knows that you're supposed to short because of bad retail sales data. So again, with this rising up, again, we're hitting sellers. We just need to find an area for it to reverse today. And again, everybody that kind of got in early, all the smart people, again, tends to be where they get stopped out, and then all of a sudden the retail trader comes in. The at home kind of retail trader, not the extra smart retail trader. And we look for a reversal. So there's a few areas, and again, this is an area we have to chunk through with the dollar index. Couple of them we can look at. I mean, the Aussie dollar is down. It was moving down from last night. We had the Australian data, and they came out with they had their monetary policy, as we mentioned yesterday at 9:30 last night. It was quite dovish, just talking about, yeah, we're just going to be in a holding pattern. We'll see. We're ready to move if anything happens,
They did say
but we're
they
not
were ready
doing.
to move. They're going to do implement policy on their 22 cases.
Yeah, on their 22 cases. Yeah, I mean, it says, we're not going to increase that right now until the actual inflation rate is sustainable. So it's kind of like, yeah. So it was quite a kind of a, we want a, more significant recovery. So I would say, if anything, it was quite a weak stance, particularly with New Zealand. Now, there has been one update. New Zealand is expected to raise later on today, but they had one confirmed case. I saw it over here. It says we have a positive case of COVID identified in the community in Auckland. So they're investigating it, but it's one. One leads to others, but they have one. And meanwhile, some of our states are like, yeah, we had 800 this week, today. So
Today, yeah, not this week.
yeah, today.
While we were on the show.
Yeah, during the show, yes. But again, I think the big thing today is going to be to watch out for is Powell and what he's talking about. Again, retail sales is what it is, but everybody seems to be moving forward with it. Remember the time that we're in right now, too, there will be a lot of buying. School supplies, back to school is always a very popular time. And again, every time there's been a stimulus out there, we've seen a pop in retail sales and then a decline after that, not able to sustain it. Again, start getting checks for money, you tend to spend it. When you don't have that check that comes to you that you didn't expect, you don't spend the money. So it's a natural reaction to it. But I think whatever Powell has to say today, and again, we saw highlights earlier yesterday and the end of last week talking about how tapering would be done by the middle of 2022. The beginning of that could start third quarter or fourth quarter now, and then interest rates are supposed to come at some point as well.
Right.
So he'll use retail sales to say, see, I told you we weren't recovered. But if you look at the year-over-year data, we're still growing back again from where we were this time last year. So It's kind of mixed data. So I would say right now, be cautious. Aussie is approaching a level again, it's driving down. This is all the negativity it had in the overnight. Will be an area where we could potentially watch for a reversal at 72.70. I would say the euro dollar is another one. We had a short. We were looking for two levels. It hit the first one. The second one is approximately down here at 117.34. We're still looking for that 117.10. It's got quite a bit to go on that one, though. It's got about another 30 pips. It can absolutely cover that 30 pips before we get to Powell's speech today. And all we need for him to say is that, we're going to make sure that we manage inflation or anything even slightly hawkish. Boom, this thing turns and runs back to the top side. So at this point, I'm kind of hoping that we have this continued free fall and we get all the way down to 117.70. But it's a level that, again, it was confirmed. It was tested. Nice push away from it. Hasn't been down there for a while. It's been like about a week since we've been there. So be a nice level. And particularly since the European Open, which started right here, right? Not quite the spike, but the initial kind of piece right here. The spike started actually at 4 o'clock, so 1 hour into the trading session. We
So
got
isn't
that big
this
push
a
lower.
little I mean, we're getting this is some strong this is some dollar strength coming out of some pretty weak retail sales. It is perplexing.
Yeah, basically what this means is people expect it to be worse than it actually was. So
Mm,
yes, there's the forecast. Remember, the forecast is kind of what the experts think, but the experts aren't traders. What this means is the market expected it to be even lower than that, and it wasn't. So,
right,
the forecast is not necessarily what Wall Street thinks that it is, as well as because this is so red, everybody sees red and they can look on this and click and say, oh, if the actual is greater than forecast, that's good for the currency. So everybody sees that and immediately goes, oh, we want to short every one of these,
right.
and that's how the market, the market makers don't care. This is just one data point. It doesn't change policy or anything. So what happens is when you see figures like this, it's like earnings. Like, somebody says, oh my God, it blew earnings out and they hit the buy button and then it goes down. You're like, why,
Right,
why is it
because
doing that? It's because everybody knows because the earnings is in the past. It's not what's going to happen in the future. But people
right,
see that green number and say, hey, that's good news. I should buy this. And
forward
yes,
looking. Right,
right. And
right.
again, if it was such a great buy, who's dumb enough to sell it to you? It is really what it boils back down to. Because remember, when you buy it and then all of a sudden it goes against you, you're gonna be like, oh my God, I gotta get out of this thing. And you start selling it. So the people that actually wanted to buy it now got it for a discounted price.
So
That's kind of how it works. So
crazy times.
yeah,
Well,
so I would
it's
say,
always in the
pound
market.
is doing the same thing. It's in a level. So
Yeah.
again, reversal area. And there's a couple of them in here. I mean, we have, even the dollar yen is rallying up again. So, but the true kind of gauge on the market is going to be something like gold. Gold has dropped a little bit, right? We talked about that 1796. We didn't make it. We made it to 1795. So I missed it by a dollar. And again, silver is also kind of pushing back to the downside. So none of these things are really showing that we have great inflation, but not a whole lot of movement. And even oil. Oil basically did nothing. Oil
Nothing.
went up slightly. It had no reaction at all. It just was literally chopping back and forth again. And then again, we'll cover this yesterday. What we talked about yesterday, the reversal.
Oh, my
Right now,
by
we
the
have a little
way,
situation.
I just gotta, just because you're bringing up oil and I'm just brought up my chart and I hadn't looked at it from yesterday.
Mhm.
Um, I do have to point this out. We had actually given that 65.50 as a, hey, if it gets down here, and I think we'd even
Yeah.
looked at some knockouts and some call spreads with a floor right down there.
Yep.
That was rather remarkable how it came down, touched it. There was definitely that opportunity. And not only that, did it find that support down there, it went up to the resistance level that we'd actually drawn.
Mhm.
I mean that was a trade yesterday, and from there it's just sort of just melted a little bit lower into the middle of the range. But
Mhm.
yeah, the discussion from yesterday was actually a pretty interesting one, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Sort of
mean,
spot on.
and that's what we've seen. Like I said, it's you can try to predict what's going to happen in the future, but a lot of times the past is what tells us is what's going to happen. And this has been something that we've seen 8, 9 times out of 10, where we've had one direction in the European session, and then the U.S. trader stepped in and completely erased everything from the prior session. Even on a big day. I mean, I mentioned not that it can't do two bigs in a row, but yesterday was a big down, then big right back up again. And at the end of the day, you know, you have those swing traders and they're like, man, nothing happened today because they were big in profit or big in loss. At the end of the day, I mean, day trading in my eyes, this is why this is so great because you can have one session take it one way, one take it the other way. End of the day, there's zero movement, but you had all that
You
movement
had
both directions.
opportunity,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Yep.
Do you want to take a quick peek before, because I want people to come to the full blown session in 3 hours. I dropped the link in, but do you want to just take a quick peek at any of the equity indices this morning before we
Yeah, you
wrap it
can
up
see they're
here?
pretty much chopping back. We had that kind of level. We talked about that channel yesterday, and we ended up dropping down and tagging that 44.32 like dead on. We literally hit it, and then that was the bouncing point. And if you guys want to know what time it bounced, 10:30. We always talk about 10:30 reversals. It came in directly at 10:30 yesterday, and then skyrocketed higher, and then started to pull back. And now we're just getting a bunch of chop back and forth. So I would say it's kind of the same scenario. It's people kind of positioning themselves for today. Having low retail sales is not great, but then you hear Walmart blowing their earnings out, so it's kind of like, it all kind of boils out. Um, I would say right now, I mean, at least with the Dow, I'm sorry, at least with the S&P, right now with the testing lows, it's kind of getting started. It's starting to kind of get. And I'll just take these. I'll move
It's
these over here.
basing.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously have, this top side is very easy to draw. You were able to draw this trend line down, and again, that was from yesterday at 4. You have touches, touches, and touches, but now it's going more sideways than anything else, and I wouldn't say you'd be able to draw a bottom channel on it. So, it's tested twice, and there's not a whole lot there. And at this point, you would have to say, hey, we got to go all the way down here. Let me check on a 15-minute real quick. Um, yeah, I mean, there you can see there's there's these two little levels right here. I'll move this over in this area. You can see these two little levels, and that's exactly what it's bouncing off of, is right that red candle. So it has hit that level twice now. One more hit would be number 3, and you know what happens after number 3. So I
Yep.
would say right now, nobody likes to see good retail sales, but the problem is with Powell speaking today at 1:30, retail sales is a number going backwards. So it's kind of like a hindsight picture. What Powell says is what's going to happen in the future, because he's what dictates the policy going forward. So it's kind of one of those things that it's great when we have retail sales because it is a very big important number. But then when you're followed up by Powell right afterwards, it's kind of like he's going to tell me what he's going to do next, and
Right.
the policy is what's going to really change what's going forward.
So all eyes ahead. 1:30.
Yeah.
So a couple things today. One, at noon Eastern, Brian's going to be doing a full blown session. So I dropped the link in there. Come back, go through all of this, and we'll have an opportunity to digest what happened following the open with the retail traders. Two, today at 1:30. So Brian
And,
will be
and I
going.
think it'll be good too because we'll see how the market is preparing for it. Remember, he has a speech that he's going to talk about. There are people that have that speech ahead of time, so the market typically will prepare for what he's going to say, and there may be some telltale signs of how to trade that when he's actually going to talk today. So, um,
Right. And so we'll
particularly in those
be able
short
to,
duration contracts, you guys know I love those. So,
yeah, and it's going to be perfect opportunity. So get set up right before Brian will be going. He'll discuss, and then Brian will wrap up, and you'll have a half hour, 40 minutes before Powell does his thing. So certainly an opportunity to prepare for that. All right, with that, any questions for Nadex, please email us, customer service at nadex.com. Any questions for Brian, you can email Brian as well, support at keeptradingsimple.com. I don't want to run through everything, but we had retail sales come in today. They were not good, but clearly expectations were they were going to be a lot worse. We saw some dollar strength across the board, a bit of retracement, and now they're continuing that dollar strength. Gold started to sell off and silver started to sell off. They started to retrace, and then people started to sell those off again. US equity indices pretty much people had expected it. I don't think they're down any worse than they were. They're certainly off session lows, and we'll see how the retail trader feels when they step in 25 minutes. With that, hopefully we'll catch you in a few hours. If not, we'll catch you again tomorrow morning. Want to wish everyone good luck in the markets. Thanks, everyone.